Hello and welcome back to Montreal by night. Um, Let me check how much I have left. Whoa. Sabrina, the librarians. Oh, fucking hell. The Queens of Mercy, Ezekiel. Oh my gosh, that's gonna go on forever, doesn't it? Fucking hell. Okay, well, I know what I'm gonna be doing for the next few weeks, huh? Jeez, I really need to get it through. I guess the good thing is that I'm not reading all that stuff, so it's really not that much when you actually consider the actual content. Because there's probably kind of half of it that is kind of being, I'm not gonna read stats and shit, so. Yitzhak, Coven Priest. Yitzhak was born Aaron Turo and served as the first rabbi of the small Sephardic Jewish community that arrived in Montreal after the British conquest of 1760. Rabbi Turo was approached by Ignace and learned of the ways of the shepherds, but recognized that their path was in danger of falling to hubris. The uniquely Catholic perspective of the early shepherds biased them against the wisdom of other faiths, and Aaron surrendered his humanity to provide another perspective. He renamed himself Yitzhak to mark his sacrifice. Like many vampires in the city, Yitzhak remained tied to his mortal community and has had covert discussions with several prominent rabbis across the centuries. A practitioner of Kabbalah in life, Yitzhak became a skilled thaumaturgist and developed the scenting in life. He presented he presented the ritual as a means to achieve transcendence by separating the spirit from the flesh, but in fact designed it as a manner of punishment. Those shepherds who had the temerity to think themselves pure would be thaumaturgically frozen for eternity. The first victim of this punishment was Ignace himself, whom Yitzhak believed to be too fascinated by his own enlightenment. Yitzhak has struggled over the years to maintain a balance in his coven between the conviction of faith and the recognition that others have something to contribute. Sir Jan, leader of the First Sabbath Inquisition, was among Yitzhak's harshest critics. Her fall into the political morass of the Sabbath civil war only lent credence to his position. Other critics have found themselves scented. Yitzhak was one of the forces behind the Conference of Cain. Its success led to his entry into the Coven's leadership circle. It was also at this time that the Nosferatu anti-tribu shepherd Raphael Catarari became the guardian of the Holocene. Yitzhak has guided several others into the scenting, all of whom have joyfully gone on to find enlightenment. Yitzhak is beginning to wonder if his ritual has been transformed. Yitzhak has been the leader of the coven since Frère Marc stepped down following the trial of Sangri. At the peak of his divine tide, Yitzhak realized that the Kamaila is ripe for conversion and has established a relationship with Cranston, the Prince of Ottawa. Yitzhak is well aware that she is only interested in retaking Montreal from the Sabbath, but he is confident that he can avoid such a fate. Whether he has fallen victim to hubris or his own remains to be seen. Of his own, sorry. Yitzhak appears as a wise father. His grey beard and shoulder-length hair frame Other shoulder length hair frame piercing eyes. He wears simple clothes over his slight frame. You are wise and knowledgeable and know what is best for your coven. You are very slow to anger and often refer to religious proverbs. Those who challenge you are candidates for the sentings. Marie-Ange Gagnon has consulted Yitzhak about his mysterious vampiric guest. She has not told him that the vampire appears to be Sangri and has sworn him to silence. Okay. Is a Toreador anti-tribu is a pedagogue, but other demeanor is a mediator. Okay, I think we have Frère Marc just done there. When the Catholic Church closed down the Jesuit order for political reasons in the late 18th century, missionary Marc Arsenault was left isolated in a native settlement in the Ottawa Valley. Returning to Montreal to gain direction from church officials and to meet with Sir Jeanne, the nun whom he had been in love with? No, corresponding with. Sorry, I was having a guess. Arsenault was attacked and embraced by a nomadic pack of country gangrel. Turned over to Jeanne, he joined the shepherds. Frère Marc never wavered from his desire to understand and convert the native of Quebec. And he was intrigued by stories of natives who never survived the embrace. He has embraced hundreds of natives in the area over the centuries, and none have survived for more than a night. Marc is convinced that the demonic force that infests Montreal is the source of these killings and has done all he can to uncover its mysteries. When his divine tide ebbs, Frère Marc's obsession becomes savage, and he resorts to harsh methods. He spends long nights torturing the enigmatic librarian Jacob the Glitch and flays natives to understand the process of their death. He also borrows the preserved art of his friend brother Andre from the oratory and performed rituals on it. Frère Marc served as leader of the shepherds from 1951 to the trial of Sangri. Some of his fellows blame his obsession with the mountain for the coven's trouble. The revelation that Sangri was an infernalist drove Marc from power and made it difficult for him to remain at the oratory. He now spends most of his time focused on his obsession, leaving coven affairs to Yitzhak and Alfred. Rugged and worn, Marc bears the scars of the road he has traveled. He stands 5'7" tall, keeps his hair long, and wears simple travel attire. You are focused on your goals. The mysteries of Montreal and the native nation can't elude you forever. You will do anything to pierce the veil of their secrets. Frère Marc probably understands the most about Montreal. He knows that the demon trapped in the mountain is a fiend of disease, and that he has access to feral creatures. He suspects that the monstrosity may not have been purged with the destruction of Sangri. He is a gangrel, anti-tribu, of a fanatic nature with a pedagogue demeanor. Raphael Catarari. Raphael Catarari was the first result in a series of dark experiments conducted by Frère Marc. In 1875, following a long court battle, Catholic Bishop Bourget was forced to bury liberal intellectual Joseph Guibord, to whom he had denied the last rites, in the Côte des Neiges cemetery on Montreal. Bourget reacted to this imposition by declaring Guibord's plot morally separate from the holy burial ground. Frere Marc knew that such a declaration might affect the aura of faith of on the mountain, and decided to experiment with the creation rite in the plot. In 1892, he arranged for a nomadic pack known as the Bastards to bring him a freshly embraced neonate. The Nosferatu anti-tribu who emerged the next night called himself Raphael and had two odd characteristics: a palpable aura that occasionally became visible and only vague memories of his life. He eventually came to believe himself a fallen angel, claiming to have been cast out of heaven for having slain another of the host. Raphael dedicated his own life to redeeming the child of Cain in repentance. He became the guardian of the Holocene as part of his quest, and altered Itzhak's rite of scenting based on his own inspiration. Scents created since then have passed on with looks of utter amazement on their face. Raphael's mind is fragile. When he's lucid, he displays ancient wisdom and enlightenment. He took the traumatized cherubim into his care and created the Obertus Choir of Cain. Choir is a weird word for me. Choir. When Raphael's mind becomes unhinged during the extremes of the divine tide, he is dangerously obsessive. In 1990, he reached the height of grace and began a campaign of public preaching. Preach, bitch! During which he revealed his full angelic glory through a potent application of presence to mortals in Montreal. He drove 50 people insane before Sangri and Cherubin could put a stop to his evangelizing. Freaking angels. He is currently entering the darkest phase of his tide and has become erotically obsessed with his companion Cherubin. Cherubim? In French I would say cherubin, but I'm not even sure that's spelled the same way, so that's why I'm wondering how I should say this one. He has become erotically obsessed with his companion Cherubin, which prevents him from continuing his mission. Raphael's twisted Nosferatu form hints at how beautiful he must have been as a mortal. Only his deep green eyes remain to testify to a heavenly form. Occasionally a golden aura shimmers around him. You do not remember all of your true life, but you recall enough. Speak in whispers and guard your secrets. Raphael is the only shepherd who suspects Itzhak of treachery, having found his right of scenting to be lacking in many ways. Raphael seeks to redeem the coven priests. He is a Nosferatu of penitent nature and has a visionary demeanor. wardle of the shepherd's cherubim is the product of the vile practice of the Sabbath. Born in 1860, Alice Maynard fell into the clutches of Kyle McConnor, a bourgeois anti-tribute pedophile, when she was 5. Abused and raped for over a year, oh boy, she was also victimized by Kyle's vicissitude, which she used to make Alice look like a porcelain doll. He then put her through the creation rite, and she remained his into the 20th century. Raphael Catarari recognized Alice's beautiful soul and helped her become strong enough to free herself. In 1911, she overcame the vinculum that bound her to Kyle, then challenged him to monomancy, during which he was hampered by his own twisted affection. Raphael brought her into the shepherds and onto their path as cherubim. The spectre of Kyle McConnor haunts cherubim. She still keeps the leather mask that he wore while violating her. When her divine tide rises, she struggles to let go of her hatred. During periods of ebb tide, she seeks vengeance by pursuing a twisted game of seduction aimed at mortal men. She brings out the pedophile in them, and then tears out their heart at the point of sexual climax. It's hard to not hate someone who abused you. It pulls your strings of self-defense. Cherubin and Raphael have begun an intensely sexual relationship. Part of Cherubin feels that the shepherd is nothing but another pedophile who is using her. Okay. She suppresses a deadly frenzy at the peak of their bloody sexual act. Cherubin's diminutive form features oversized glassy eyes, a rosy face, and a large round head. She wears leather clothes. Her hair in colored braids and carries weighted throwing daggers and a curved carving knife. She tries to look less like a plaything. You have never recovered from your victimization. You put up a good front, but deep down you know no life except that of the dominated slave. She is a bourgeois of Generation 10, a bit masochistic, a bit. How do you move past your trauma when you've been abused? You have to embrace, you have to learn to not enjoy it, but you have to learn to appreciate what it taught you. You have to appreciate what kind of person you became because of that. You have to thank them for making you stronger and more. clairvoyant. If it's physical torture, there's only so much you can do because you can't understand. You don't learn insight from it. You learn physical resistance to pain, I guess, but when it's psychological abuse, hopefully you've learned the signs and the red flags that you should avoid in the future. So in a way, it's a good life lesson. Doesn't excuse their behavior, but it's the silver lining that you should remind yourself of. Let's move on to Sabrina. She was an art student who flirted with several fringe religions and thus attracted Yitzhak attention. While mortal, she studied religious artwork. Now that she is a vampire, she studies life and unlife. Depending on her divine tide, she restores the most horrendous of creatures or mass the perfect. Okay. Sabrina's greatest accomplishment is the corruption of Montreal-born supermodel Claire. The toreador convinced her that beauty was only valuable if it lived with horror. And she watched as the mortal highlighted her appeal. By creating an aura of tragedy about herself, under Sabrina's influence, Claire arranged for gruesome accidents to claim her family and manipulated a stalker into killing her fellow models. Claire's picture, radiant in the splattered blood of her colleagues, flashed across every television in North America. Sabrina used that image to show Claire how violence accentuated her beauty. In 1992, Claire shocked the world when she used a razor to peel off her own face during a nightly entertainment interview. Okay. Claire. Who's Claire? I hope we're going to talk about her after. Sabrina's most recent project is the monstrous Nosferatu Elias the Whale. She has uncovered the beauty at the core of Elias' being and is nurturing it through romance. The two vampires meet regularly, love blossoms in Elias' art, and the toreador looks forward to it blooming so that she can shatter it, making Elias a perfect creature of horror. Sabrina has a stunning beauty. She has long auburn hair, however, her hair can't hide the scars that remain from her mortal experiment with body art. She stains all of her clothes with blood to contrast her beauty with horror. The creation rites made the world your canvas, and you are determined to explore its possibilities. You seek redemption through your heart, and use terror and seduction in equal measure to create your masterpiece. Sabrina has discovered a hidden cache of Véronique Lacruel's homicidal artwork. as well as two of Archbishop Santosa's servants. They have since become Sabrina's retainers. She's avant-garde, she's a deviant. She's a Toreador deviant anti-tribu. I can probably do the introduction of the librarians. Wheel goes round, landing on a twist of faith. Taking your choices, you'll have the right answers when the final judgment begins. The big wheel. I think those are like lyrics from songs. Let me double check because I'm curious to. I know the big wheel from Massive Attack. But, oh yeah, Rush. It's kind of interesting because as this book has been written in like 96, 97, all the songs are from the 80s, early 90s. So that would be interesting to do a kind of mashup of all those different songs, or reuse those songs to do the potential videos that I'm thinking of doing. I'll have to do a class on video editing to have a proper idea of what it's involving. But that would be really cool to do the drawings of the different characters and all that. Do match them with the songs, create the style, visual style and all that for the librarians and shit like that. So that's a side project that I'm gonna use, but I'm sick of adding more side projects because I have so many things to do already that is taking away from some time that I could spend on the game. But maybe that's part of it. That's part of the turning this game into a potentially official one. That would be fun. Turning Vampire le Fruit Defendu into an official Montreal by Night, White Wolf approved canon. I'm dreaming awake. Following the announcement at the beginning of the 19th century that the shepherds of Cain were sending representatives to other cities to begin a Sabbath renaissance, a number of Cainite scholars returned with the delegates to offer their services. The shepherds, though unable to accept new members, were more than happy to assist in the creation of a sister coven. The librarians formed to help in the amassing and dissemination of Sabbath history and folklore, since its goal ran parallel with the shepherds. The two groups worked together, shared knowledge, debated theories, registered various genealogies, and acquired new information. The coven that became known as the Librarians was first formed around a core group of three members: Beatrice Longu, Donald Kaminsky, and Antonio Di Capelli. As time passed, Sir Marian, the shepherd's chronicler of the Litany of Blood, came to rely on the librarians. The shepherds were more interested in the pursuit of esoteric and religious phenomena, while the librarians had a thirst for knowledge in general. It was not surprising then that with the departure of Sir Marian after Ignac's sainting, responsibility for the Litany of Blood was turned over to the librarians. Beatrice Longu, a Chiazide, was chosen as leader of the coven, a decision that did not sit well with Donald Kaminsky. Donald chose to air his grievance through monomancy. Much to the surprise of all attending, she trashed her opponent. When it came time to slay Donald, Beatrice chose a more disturbing fate for him. He became the pages for volumes 1 and 2 of the first genealogy skin tomes. Since the mid-19th century, the librarians have been the keepers of the Litany of Blood and the chroniclers of Sabbath history. The coven, not inclined toward combat, has a lower attrition rate than most. The members fight when asked to, and sometimes without being asked, but the librarians believe that their contribution of the sect lies in the preservation and application of knowledge. Beatrice Longu remained as the head of the librarians, helping its rank swell and pursuing those promising individuals who she believes are suited to the coven. Of the other original members, Antonio Di Capelli vanished in Rome while trying to break into the Vatican. Debate still rages about as to whether he fell to the Giovannis or the Pope himself. Donald Kaminsky remains volumes 1 and 2 of the genealogy skin tomes. With the introduction of new members over the past century, the coven has grown to a respectable size. Assuming the responsibility of tending to the Litany of Blood, the librarians moved into the Alexandrium library, an adjoining wing to the Temple of Eternal Whispers. Only the librarians have full access to the library, though those seeking knowledge are allowed entrance under the watchful eye of the coven members and their Obertus caretakers. The entrance to the Alexandrium, the Gates of Eternity, is in Cain's Chapel. The double gates bear a bas-relief carved in bronze that depict naked mortals clambering over one another. The doors are mystically sealed by their interlocking arms and can only be opened by whispering arcane into the ears of one of the images. Otherwise, nothing short of brute force combined strength rating of 15 can pry the doors open. Okay. The gates of eternity open into a central corridor that has several work tables and dozens of adjoining catacomb-like passages. The tunnels are dark and lined with row upon rows of books and skin tomes. Oh my gosh. The tunnels also lead to the vampire's various layers. These corridors, narrow enough to allow one person through at a time, are 20 feet high, which accentuate their claustrophobic grip. Of the 12 layer chamber, 3 are empty, 5 are occupied by the librarians, and 4 of the larger ones are taken by Obertus ghouls and their families. Rites and practices. The librarians are not given to elaborate rituals and observance other than the yearly opening of the litany. Rather, they spend their time studying and cross-referencing new information. They believe that their spiritual well-being lies in the adherence to the various paths of enlightenment, not in rites. Muttering of the divine. When it comes time for the mtlByNight tribute, Jacob the Glitch, who is kept by the librarians to lose his memory. The members gather on the eve of the full moon to listen to him rumble. As Jacob enters his cycle, the librarians begins their meditation and concentrate on the gibberish he spouts. Most of the time his words make no sense, but on rare occasion Jacob speaks a coherent phrase or sentence. After Jacob collapses, the coven spend the evening debating the meaning of his utterance. Okay, the muttering of the divine. Interesting. Well, okay. So that gives us an introduction to the librarians, and tomorrow, whenever tomorrow is next, we're gonna go through Beatrix and Jacob the Glitch and Marie-Ange Gagnon and maybe Molly-8. Then I'll do Christianus, Lionel. Maybe I should do those ones all in one shot. Anyway, I guess I should. I don't know. I'm kind of considering doing one video for each part and have like an introduction for each character, I guess. So it would be like the videos would be quite short, maybe like a couple of minutes, few minutes, but at least that would be more modulable, and if I need to redo one, then I wouldn't have to redo a whole video. So that could be an interesting way of doing it. So we'll see. I'll have to think about that anyway. I think I will try a few things to see how it works, and then see what works the best. Test, trial and error, and start again. Alrighty, it's been nearly 40 minutes, so next time I'll come back to Beatrice Langou. I hope you have a good night, and I will see you another time. Bye.